All right, so today we are diving into something I bet you never thought you'd find yourself thinking about for like the next half hour or so. Chewing gum.
Mm.
Or,
Mm.
more specifically, the time that Singapore banned it outright.
Yeah,
You with me?
absolutely. Good.
Because this isn't just some like weird historical footnote.
Yeah.
It gets into all sorts of interesting stuff about, social engineering, unintended consequences, you name it.
It really is a fascinating case study. And the articles you shared, especially the ones from the National Library of Singapore, give us a lot to unpack.
Okay, so story time. Picture this.
Hmm.
It's 1991. Singapore's got this like brand spanking new mass rapid transit system,
AI.
the MRT,
Yeah.
state of the art, pride of the nation, the whole deal.
Of course.
And what brings this technological marvel to its knees?
Well, let me guess.
Yep, you guessed it, chewing gum.
Chewing gum.
I know, right?
Though not literally, of course.
Right.
But it was causing real headaches, literally probably for the MRT engineers trying to figure out why their fancy new train doors kept malfunctioning. Turns out some creative vandals had taken to sticking their used gum on the door sensors.
Okay, now that you mention it, I do vaguely recall hearing about this.
Yeah.
But still chewing gum. That seems kind of low stakes for a nationwide ban, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
I mean, did they try just like asking people nicely to use a trash can?
You bring up a good point. It's not like gum was the only thing they could have banned.
Right.
But if we want to understand why Singapore went to such lengths, we need to rewind a bit and look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
This MRT incident, while definitely attention-grabbing, wasn't some isolated incident.
Context is everything.
Exactly.
So what was the chewing gum situation like in Singapore before they brought down the hammer? Were people just like sticking it everywhere?
Pretty much. By the 1980s, gum litter had become a real eyesore. We're talking gum in mailboxes, gum jamming keyholes, gum stubbornly clinging to elevator buttons. You name it, gum was there, pavements, under bus seats. It was a sticky situation indeed.
Oh, yuck.
Imagine walking down the street and it's like an obstacle course of discarded gum.
Oh, gross.
It's not exactly the image of a modern, sophisticated city-state, right?
No, not at all. And for those who haven't had the chance to visit Singapore yet, it's known for being incredibly clean and orderly. So you can imagine how this whole gum situation must have stuck in the craw of, well, everyone.
It did.
But more than just the yuck factor, I'm guessing all that gum removal wasn't cheap either.
You're absolutely right. Our sources mention that the Housing and Development Board was spending a whopping $150,000 annually just to deal with gum litter. Now, I'm no finance whiz, but that's a whole lot of cash. I can already picture someone in the government saying, enough is enough. We've got to put a stop to this sticky situation.
Exactly. And remember, this was the early 90s,
Oh,
a
yeah.
time when Singapore was really doubling down on its image as a modern, efficient, and, yes, clean nation.
Right.
They even had that whole campaign about flushing public toilets. Sounds familiar?
Oh, yeah, the courtesy campaign. I remember seeing those posters everywhere.
Yeah.
So basically, chewing gum became public enemy #1 right up there with not flushing after yourself.
Basically.
But surely not everyone was thrilled about the government banning something as seemingly harmless as gum. Oh, absolutely not. You've got to remember, this is Singapore we're talking about.
Right.
A place where people are known for being vocal, even when it comes to their chewing habits. Our sources from the National Library highlight this divide beautifully.
Okay, so lay it on me. Who was team chewing gum and who was team ban it?
Well, on the pro-ban side, you had groups like the Consumers Association of Singapore.
Yeah.
They were all for it, arguing that it would make Singapore a cleaner, greener place to live. And let's be honest, nobody likes stepping in someone else's discarded gum.
Yeah, that's never a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I can see how it plays into their national pride, wanting to be known as a pristine, well-run society.
Hmm.
But what about the other side of the coin? What were the anti-ban arguments?
Those who opposed the ban saw it as a classic case of government overreach, a step too far. They argued that education and stricter fines for littering would have been a more reasonable solution, a way to address the issue without resorting to a total ban.
Okay.
There was this one letter to the editor, actually, that we came across in our research. This person was really fired up, arguing that the ban infringed on personal freedoms and that responsible gum chewers were being unfairly punished for the actions of a few.
Now that you mentioned personal freedom, it does make you think. This idea of where we draw the line between individual choice and the greater good is something we're still grappling with today, right?
All the time.
I mean, look at the smoking bans, sugar taxes.
Yeah.
It's like this constant push and pull between what we want to do as individuals and what's best for society as a whole.
Exactly. And this chewing gum ban really brings that tension to the forefront. But before we spiral down the rabbit hole of existential societal debates, let's get back to Singapore. The ban goes into effect in '92. What happens? Did people just magically stop chewing gum overnight?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. Did the streets transform into these sparkling gum-free zones?
Hmm.
Since Singapore goes all in on this chewing gum ban, did it actually work?
Oh, it worked.
Huh.
The results were pretty dramatic. Remember those 525 cases of gum litter they were dealing with every single day?
It was like a gum apocalypse. It's kind of hard to imagine that now.
Right. Well, within a year of the ban, that number plummeted to just two.
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 Wow. Talk about a success story. I bet the city's cleaning crews held a massive gum-free celebration. So case closed then, right? Singapore,
Okay.
1. Chewing gum, 0. End of story.
Well, not quite. There's a little more to it. This is where our story takes an unexpected turn. You might think this is where the story ends, but Singapore's journey with chewing gum takes an unexpected turn a few years later. Remember that free trade agreement Singapore signed with the United States?
Oh, here we go.
Uh,
I knew there had to be a plot twist. What did the U.S. have against clean streets anyway?
well, it wasn't quite like that. It turns out that part of the agreement involved allowing the sale of chewing gum in Singapore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like the U.S. really loves its chewing gum to the point of writing it into international agreements.
Wow. I'm picking up what you're putting down here. Talk about a sticky situation, literally. So did Singapore have to cave under the pressure?
Yeah.
Did chewing gum make a triumphant return?
They did, but with a very specific caveat. In 2004, Singapore amended the ban to allow the sale of therapeutic, dental, and nicotine gum. However, these aren't your average corner store variety. You need a prescription from a dentist or pharmacist to get your hands on them.
So it's like gum is back, but in a very controlled, almost medicinal kind of way. It's like some kind of parallel universe where only dentists are happy about Wrigley stock prices.
It's a rather amusing image, isn't it? But it really speaks to how Singapore operates. They addressed their initial concerns, cleaned up their streets, and maintained their image, but then faced with international pressure and trade realities, they found a compromise.
It's fascinating how something as seemingly trivial as chewing gum can become this unexpected window into a country's values and priorities.
Absolutely.
Really interesting stuff. Well, that was quite the deep dive. From gum-clogged train doors to international trade deals and existential questions about personal freedom. Who knew that chewing gum had so much to teach us? Thanks for joining us as we unpack this surprisingly chewy topic.